Dr. Champa is presently serving as Professor and Dean at Mysore School of Architecture. She has two masters to her credit from Delhi and Mysore University in Ecology and Environment and Urban Design. During the centenary years of Mysore University, Champa got awarded for her Ph.D. with the title Refurbishing the Identity of a City in Transition, an Urban Design Intervention into Development Paradigm of Mysuru. Dr. Champa has worked in Bangalore, Goa, and Kerala before setting up her own independent practice based out of Mysore and has completed many resorts, residences, hotel, institutes, etc. Dr. Champa has served as principal at School of Design University of Mysore before moving on a teaching assignment at Birla Institute of Technology, UAE. She has served as director at SVS School of Architecture, Coimbatore. Dr. Champa has presented and published many papers in international and national conferences and journals. Professor Vivina Kathia. Professor Vivina Kathia completed bachelor's from Malnad College of Engineering, University of Mysore, and master's in urban design from School of Planning, Mysore University. Presently working as associate professor at Mysore School of Architecture, Mysore. Passionate to teach, learn, explore, and enjoy being with young budding architects. Dr. Balaji Venkatachari. Balaji Venkatachari serves as an associate professor at Mysore School of Architecture in Karnataka. He is trained as an architect and conservator from Anna University and School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, respectively. He earned his Ph.D. in conservation from School of Planning and Architecture, Bhopal. He has contributed to architecture and conservation consultancy in New Delhi, Hyderabad, and Chennai. His research interest includes cultural landscapes and traditional knowledge systems. Rupashri AP. Rupashri is working as an associate professor at Mysore School of Architecture. She has graduated BA from University of Mysuru and Masters of Architecture Advanced Design from Manipal University. She has got an experience in industry, working on projects like residential, retail, commercial buildings. She also has a taught at Faculty of Architecture Manipal and University School of Design Mysuru. Her interest of subjects are sustainability, parametric design, climate responsive design. Professor Deepthi K.S. Deepthi presently teaching at Mysore School of Architecture, graduated UG from RVCA Bangalore and Masters in Architecture Urban Design at SPA University of Mysore. Having an experience of 4 years in both minor and international projects during work tenure, and she is aspiring to explore new paths in retaining heritage conservation and development.
Uh, welcome. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you all. We are very happy to be presenting our fourth year studio work here, which we've called it as Deciphering Urbanized Villages of Mysuru. So our student will be sharing the presentation. We will go
Good morning. This is an introduction and an insight to the architectural design studio of semester 8 of the 2018 batch of Mysore School of Architecture. The aim of the design studio is to re-envision the urbanized villages of Mysuru, the chosen villages being Bogadi, Paduarhalli, Hinkal and Kumbarkoppal. As all of our villages are in Mysore, let us take a peek into it. Mysuru is one of the famous historical cities of South India, with it serving as the former capital of the princely state of Mysuru, having its extents from Maharashtra in the north to Madras Presidency in the south. It has both tangible and intangible heritage with stunning palaces and richly preserved architecture that is visually splendid to experience, making it a major tourist destination. The city of Mysuru has a long tradition with its practices lying in 400 years of culture passed from generations of Maharajas, celebrating the world-renowned Dasara festival with great grandeur and is an integral part of the culture and life in Mysuru. It is a prime heritage city in India, having the right combination of built and natural heritage. The city is characterized by architectural and urban design elements like vistas, focal points, landmarks, nodes, avenues, and plazas. Mysuru has earned the titles of the Heritage City, the Royal City, the City of Palaces, the Cultural Capital of Karnataka, and has remained worthy of all the titles till date. Among the 4 chosen villages, Paduvarhalli covers an area of 40.5 hectares and has a population of 14,000 people. It has primary community settlements of Nayakas and Gaudas. Coimbatore also covers an area of 40.5 hectares and houses 11,630 people. The village, which was originally meant for potters and farmers, has now turned into a hub for migrant workers. Bogadi covers an area of 44.5 hectares and holds a population count of 9,041 people. Bogadi was primary community settlement of Vokkaliga Gaudas and their major occupation was farming. It has now become one of the fastest developing urban villages of Mysuru thanks to the ring road. Hinkal, being the largest chosen urban village, covers an area of 72.84 hectares and boasts a population of 8,605 people. The major occupations of the people living here are carpentry and masonry works. Keeping history in mind, it was now the task of understanding these villages by conducting study area visits consisting of interviews done by inquiring stakeholders and plot owners, collecting statistics and demographics from government officials, census, and photographs taken on street level by drones and of activities on the streets and vernacular houses. After this intense study, mapping of the areas took place by collection of data, information, and observation on study area. These study area visits in turn helped with the analysis done in the form of SWOT analysis, identifying issues and opportunities the study area had posed and arriving at conclusions of the study areas. The study was further aided to understand the history and heritage by documentation of vernacular houses along with the street profiles and sections. The study area visits and studies have helped us achieve the aim of the design studio, which is to come up with a proposal with various iterations for these urbanized villages. Paduvarhalli. The village of Paduvarhalli is located in the heart of Mysuru, 4.1 km away from the city centre. The focus being Mysuru Palace and is the closest to the city centre out of all the study areas. The study area boasts a population of 14,000 people. The privately owned lands of Paduvarhalli mainly served as agricultural fields pre-urbanization and were converted into today's residential neighborhood areas of Jayalakshmipuram, Vijayashripuram and Vijayanagar as a result of the agricultural lands acquired and divided by the government. Prior to urbanization, the people of Paduvarhalli were farmers and shepherds with their lands located in the surrounding areas of the site accessible by foot and bullock carts. Between 1930 to 1990, the CITB, the City Improvement Trust Board, or now the MUDA, Mysuru Urban Development Authority, acquired the agricultural lands and divided them into housing plots. During the 1980s, with onset of municipal corporation, it meant newer infrastructure and paved roads as the study area was the closest to the city centre, which was on a path towards an urbanized setting. But the core village of Paduvarhalli, with its citizens, chose not to undergo this cycle of new change, thus retaining the rural aspect which stays evident to this day. The site originally was surrounded with pastures and farmlands, and this was majorly occupied by shepherds for cattle grazing. The area gradually slopes downward from the west to east, where the collector basin is located. This basin acts as the major feed to the Kukralli Lake, which is in the immediate vicinity of the study area. Also, this watershed basin is used as the main stormwater let-off, thus keeping the site from flooding. Some of the existing barren lands are either used for cow grazing or are being used as dumping yards. The expansion of Paduvarhalli started with the now existing village area and organically spread towards other parts of the modern-day area. Thus, the ownership plots are not organized into that of an urban division, and this is evident in the rural area. Also, due to such dense fabric, the area is permeable and offers easy access to other parts of the outlying areas for pedestrian use, but this hinders the vehicular and emergency service movement. Also, due to the dense grain of built spaces, it gives the study area a distinct fabric from the rest of the adjacent neighborhood areas. Most of the buildings are residential in nature, with other typologies such as commercial and public are located near the major roads such as the Bangalore-Mysuru highway, which also is the spine of the study area and the access point to Paduvarhalli. The buildings on site are majorly one-storied, thus have a linear hierarchy in the skyline. Irregular breaks occur due to few multi-storied buildings. This hampers visibility of the user as it is sometimes too monotonous. The buildings in the core and underdeveloped area have retained sloping roofs. The core is also where most of the vernacular houses are located, with few of them being 100 plus years old and still in good condition. This gives the site a character that sets it apart from the surrounding buildings that are mostly made of masonry and are quite recent. Due to recent developments such as road widening, the frontage of many streets and individual houses have disappeared. Houses that contain cattle are now tying them directly exposed to the street. Hawkers and vehicles are illegally parked, thus hindering vehicle movement. Also, construction sites dump their equipment and resources right out in the street, which threaten residents and pedestrians. The core and adjacent residential areas are easily accessible by arterial and subarterial roads. The intersection of collector roads inside the core are nodes and also house commercial buildings. The majority of the commercial buildings lie along the arterial roads and mark different districts and act as district edges. Few of the major arterial roads such as Adipampa Road and Valmiki Road are also used as procession pathways during festivals. Paduvarhalli also hosts many societal festivals such as Ugadi, Sankranti, Deepavali, and also few festivals that are celebrated by certain communities such as Ambedkar Jayanti, Valmiki Jayanti, and Mari Habba. This also goes to show the diverse communities that occupy the study area such as Gaudas, Nayakas, scheduled castes, and other classes. The study area caters to the basic need of the society such as shops, schools, institutions, hospitals which have been seen recent developments and help the general public by being located in close proximity and are easily accessible. Also, the citizens brought few issues into light such as waterlogging during heavy rains due to the basin not being open to the stormwater let-off, the poor condition of the buildings, poor public infrastructure in water and electricity supply, and untimely delays in government sanctions. It was also noted that the community was dismayed due to no open space or common gathering space to celebrate certain festivals, as temples and roads surrounding the space would get crowded during festivities. Few of the well-preserved vernacular houses were documented. They contain courtyards, wooden detailed pillars, and elements that are signature characteristics of the study area. A number of these houses were once gifted by the royal family to prominent people and craftsmen, which during that era were made in the style of the ongoing architectural trend. These houses are the current relics of the past, which act as historical markers in an area that has seen the urbanization of Paduvarhalli. The site also shows the treatment and the standings of the society. Spaces such as chai tapris, industrial shops, most commercial and work spaces being male-dominated, while spaces such as community taps, house frontages are female-dominated. The major child-friendly spaces apart from the schools are the open grounds and streets, which are active during the night due to good illumination. There are a lot of open drains near the children play area, which affect the quality of activity and threatens safety of children. Speaking about the urban health of the area, open drains and random dumping yards are causing issues as these spaces are inaccessible and devoid of activity. The lack of green pockets in the study area is also quite problematic. Due to time constraints, only Paduvarhalli has been explained in detail and the remaining study areas are going to be shown briefly. Bogadi. Bogadi is located on the western edge of Greater Mysuru, 7 km from the Mysuru Palace and beyond the Mysuru Ring Road. It has a total population of 9,041 and is governed by the Bogadi Town Panchayat. This was the latest village to be merged into Mysuru among our 4 study areas, but is the fastest developing one. The core of the study area is fine-grained and organically developed, whereas the newly developing northern and eastern parts have quite a few vacant lots, which are filling up drastically. Also, the only retained vernacular buildings are concentrated in the center of the site. The major contributor for this development is the Mysuru Ring Road, constructed in 2005. The sidewalks of these roads have naturally turned into activity hubs. The major lung space of the study area is the coconut banana plantation and is preserved as a private property. The stormwater naturally drains off to the Bogadi Lake in accordance with the natural slope. 3 vernacular houses were taken up as case studies, out of which 2 of these houses were completely retained, whereas the third one is only half the original structure. We can see that all these houses are courtyard houses and have a sufficiently big storeroom and a cowshed. The Marigudi temple holds great socio-cultural importance as it is said to have been the beginning of Bogadi and belongs to the Vokkaliga Gowda community. People gather here for Mari Habba every year. Hinkal. Hinkal is a census village situated at the intersection of Hunsur Road NH 275 and Ring Road NH 275K in the outskirts of Mysuru, Karnataka, India. Hinkal was a village settlement which was maintained by the Maharajas. Presently, it has been developed into a housing layout. The major change in the arrangement of the village was mostly because of the ring road. The Nanneshwara temple is situated in the village and was built during the Chola dynasty, dating back to 1250 years. The Devara Kere lake, located next to historic Nanneshwara Swami temple, once spread across 6.6 acres and was once the main water source in Hinkal. The natural slope is towards the lake, creating a catchment area, making it easy to direct the stormwater towards it. The village is characterized by a clustered pattern of settlements with no proper distribution of open spaces. There is a concentration of negative spaces around the lake premises which haven't been maintained. The school and clinic act as the government condensers and the temples act as the major social condenser. Though the village is subjected to urbanization, it is still functioning based on the village communities and the merged government. Another notable change due to the implementation of the flyover is the growth of the commercial sector adjacent to the NH 275. Kumbarkoppal. People migrated from nearby villages like Hebbal, Metgalli, Belvata, Maranagaudanahulli, Kavanahalli, Basaralu, and Lingadevara Koppal formed the initial population of the village. Around 500 people and 150 houses comprised Kumbarkoppal, of which the majority were Vokkaliga Gaudas, constituted the village back in the day. The families residing in the face of the settlement were potters, who are locally known as the Kumbaras, hence the name Kumbarkoppal. The present population of Kumbarkoppal is 11,630. The core is fine-grained and has houses that are up to 150 years old, whereas the rest of the study area is quite coarse-grained and has newer houses. Unlike the other three villages, residents in this village were seen maintaining small gardens in the open spaces. Both the main roads and the connector roads are too narrow to handle the daily traffic, especially during the peak commute time. The presence of a blooming industrial area like Hebbal has led Kumbarkoppal to be the housing hub for the migrant employees of the industries. After the village studies, the study areas were identified having few issues which were seen in common across the villages. These issues posed as a challenge that has to be overcome by the design proposals. The issues were identified on micro level, that is at settlement scale, then at neighborhood scale, and finally in a city scale. The government has provided the villages with basic services such as water taps to each house, electricity, stormwater drainage, and UGD that have helped the overall health of the community life. As the demand for RCC and modern structure has increased, mud houses are being demolished, which is having adverse effect on the ecological health of the area. The stormwater drains in the study area are inefficient as the water flows into the streets when they fill up during monsoon. The children have no designated playgrounds or parks and play out in the open street, which is not safe due to vehicular movement and other street activity. Roads have encroached frontages and house offsets due to road widening. The empty plots and unused barren lands have been converted into dump yards and have now become the grazing fields for cattle. In Paduvarhalli, the temple plaza, which should be a space of activity, is used for informal parking, thus making the space less legible. The plots of Paduvarhalli have less value due to its rural setting and has caused a low standard of living. Due to urbanization, the agricultural lands were flattened, losing its natural terrain. In Bogadi, few of the collector roads in the village area are still underdeveloped and are in dreadful condition, making for unpleasant movement both for vehicles and pedestrians and a major liability during monsoon season. Due to organic plot boundaries of houses in the core, these houses have no proper offsets and make it harder to access the ones located further inside. Thus, these houses use conservancy lanes as accessways. Most roads on the site and off-site leading to the neighborhoods end abruptly, thus making it confusing to access other areas. In Hinkal, The flyover calls for a negative space that is away from the safe eyes of the public, thus encouraging illegal activities such as littering, illegal parking, and accidents, which are very common. Also, the government response to the study area is neglected as there are no government hospitals in the immediate vicinity and an ancient temple that has been overlooked and gone undocumented. In Coimbatore, there is no designated area for loading and unloading of goods, which has led owners to dock them along the road, which hinders vehicle movement. The presence of an industrial area adjacent to Coimbatore has made it to become a hub for migrants and daily wage workers who have settled along the main Nala on site and has led to the creation of slum that is in poor condition. Here, a few demonstrations have been jotted down on what can be introduced in these study areas based on analysis. After looking at the issues faced by the public, we came up with a few proposals and policies to beat them. The proposals given are setting up garbage collection points throughout the site, the adaptive reuse of the old abandoned match factory into a dispensary skill development center, the re-establishment of the unused park with proper accentuated entry and exit to increase the legibility of the overall site. The Jodi Marama temple area can be redesigned so that people can use it as a social condensing space. Thus, vehicular parking is also reduced. The creation of a much needed market space. Similarly, the proposed policies are road width must dictate building heights, the street lights or poles are in close proximity to a structure, the wiring or lights need to be incorporated within the facade. With the vision of retaining the essence of the village, a few policies are recommended to be implemented to improve the residents' and the wayfarers' convenience and the environment. A road development policy, a policy for urban street vendors, an urban land policy, a public and community toilets policy, a waste disposal policy, a rainwater harvesting policy, a redevelopment of water body policy, an industrial and infrastructural development policy, an education policy, an urban transportation policy, a non-motorized transport policy, a government hospital policy, an old house regeneration policy, an urban transportation policy, an urban mobility policy, a non-motorized transport policy, a culture and heritage development policy, an heritage and tourism policy, watershed area redevelopment policy, and the operation and maintenance of sanitary installations policy. Paduvarhalli. The annual Jodi Marama Jatre at Paduvarhalli that has a history of over 500 years is celebrated in a grand manner, and the police department provides all necessary facilities and security to make the event successful. The Jodi Marama Jatre attracts thousands of people from in and around Mysore, and the residents want to retain the historic nature of the Jatre. Bugadi, a farmer's market. The objective of this proposal is to help all kinds of farm products reach the people directly in a social and interactive space. This will also serve as an identity for Bogadi. Large tree-like structures covering the entire site act as structures protecting from harsh environment. Also, due to their shape imitating trees, rainwater is collected in the water storage and filtering tanks. Farm Tourism Center. The aim is to revive tourism and improve the study area's economic status without exploiting the residents' cultural identity. It is to make certain that the communities can preserve and present their history and culture to their own community and strengthen their sense of belonging. The waterfront development. This can easily become an identity to the lake that it presently lacks. The restaurant and the two entrance plazas serve as the major recreational spaces and attractions. A wide range of services and activities under agritourism offered here includes guided tours, participation in agricultural activities, knowledge sessions, animal rights, and other activities which helps promote farm tourism. Hinkal, flyover and road widening. Widening of road within the study area along Mysuru-Bangalore highway. The proposed 1.5 km long flyover consists of 2 lanes, each 3.7 meter wide. It is elevated 10 meter above ground and the width of the flyover is about 10 meter. This proposal helps in free vehicular flow on the highway so that the localites can commute without the fear of fast moving vehicles. Bus stand and terminal. Hinkal being a transit point, people commute to outstation destinations on daily basis. This leads to a large number of people commuting via Hinkal, which creates congestion and traffic on road. Buses traveling towards Mandya, Ooty, and Bangalore can have a transit stop at this bus stand and can continue the journey via Ring Road by avoiding the city traffic. Many commuters also face the issue of informal parking under the flyover and along the road. This can be prevented by providing a dedicated parking area. Kumbarkopal. Adaptive reuse of the existing chowltry. The women of Kumbarkopal are mainly housewives, but some women go out to work while very few women work from home. As adaptive reuse can help in lowering construction costs, especially compared to traditional building projects, the chowltry opposite to the temple can be utilized for displaying or selling products from cottage industry when the chowltry is not in use. The Nala Development Proposal. The Nala that is completely neglected can be redesigned by increasing visual and public access to the Nala by transforming it into an ecological network. Maintenance can be integrated by creation of access balconies for maintenance of the sewer line directly from the road level. Trash barriers can also be integrated at strategic locations for better control. So, to wind up, these villages are the relics preserved over time. It continues to play its role as the bridge between traditional and the modern city of Mysuru. Also, these villages create employment in a sense that it houses construction workers, maids, part-time workers who are the main source of workforce that have helped urbanize the city.
Thank you. Thank you for playing this. Very interesting these studies are. I think Professor Champa, if you want to have any concluding remarks, we would take it from there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we would really like to thank UVCT for this particular opportunity. When we got in touch with Professor Anand Khatri for more as an external reviewing our students' work, but then he's offered this particular opportunity, and the students have really worked hard for this particular presentation. And actually, we are only halfway through the semester. So that means we were only in the process of identifying issues and opportunities of these 4 villages which we had chosen. But then for this particular conference, we really made all 65 students work day, night, and they have really put it up. Okay. So, but then we have another 4 to 6 weeks to complete the semester. I'm sure where the policies and then the demonstration will be much more elaborated, and certain homeworks, case studies will be done, and the challenge will be fulfilled. Okay, so as I just wanted to say, these villages are really acting as condenser for Mysore city, and all the 4 villages are in the very proximity of the Mysore city. Okay, and certain few things which are really special to these villages were even found out by these students. One was 1200 years old temple, or the Garidi Mane, what we call it as, I mean, this is space for the wrestling, and these two villages still have it and they use these spaces. And as all of you know, the Mysore Dasara festival, we do have this wrestling competition. So many of these villages go and take part in all these things. And city and neighborhood both are dependent on these villages. At the same time, it's the vice versa too, because even all our maids or construction workers, anybody comes from these villages, but then they have maintained a characteristics. We don't not feel it's an alien to Mysore city or anything. It is well embedded, and though it is engulfed, but it's embedded into the Mysore city life. So this is what I would like to tell. And also thanks to all the students and Professor Sapna, who actually made us look into the urban villages for our studio project, and Professor Balaji and Professor Vivina and Professor Rupashri and Professor Deepthi, who have been constantly with the student taking the studio forward. And thanks to UVCT and Professor Khatri. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Indeed, ma'am, the pleasure is ours as well. And we can see that so much effort has gone in, and the students have done an incredible job of putting these studies together. We could make out that even there's an attempt of proposals being given, and that is incredible.
Actually, I just would, as I mentioned,
Yes.
it is only 3 days that, they just worked,
Yes.
the entire batch worked towards it, so that, we didn't want it to stop at the documentation and identifying of issues and opportunity. We said, no, we have to do it, and they worked it. And even the presentation, I think the whole night, even Professor Kadre has been, following it up. Well, I should actually take the names of Mayur, Karthik, Vidya, Pragnya, and Niyata, who have really worked hard for the presentation too.
It is very much appreciated and praiseworthy. I would like to congratulate the entire team as well. And we can notice even like your students' presentation and even the previous one from Chandigarh, the enthusiasm with which the students, the younger minds, are looking at urban villages. And for example, a small nuance I noted in your presentation today by one of the students, they mentioned about spaces which are, which are dominated by males, spaces which are dominated by females. So please, it's such a congratulatory remark that when you enter into such sensibility towards spaces, towards the social, aspect, how a space is used, and you bring in that humanizing angle to the entire study.
That's right.
It's congratulatory. So any other questions, Professor Khatri? I would ask you to jump in.
It's so encouraging. In fact, I had said earlier in the morning also, thank you, Dr. Champa, thank you, Dr. Bhavra and Dr. Vandana. I believe, there is so much of energy in academia. And if you ask an architect who has worked for 25 years designing houses, making buildings, doing interiors, to look into urban villages, that architect would seldom have an eye to understand what is happening. Believe me, a professional is not equipped to understand what is happening inside these villages and the problems of these villages, because we all have been trained with a sense of development, which we are through that lens we are looking at everything. But only fresh minds guided by academicians can actually research into it. We need the strength of academia to settle issues and to settle problems into policy, or maybe problems into provisions, or problems into localized solutions. And I am really touched. I was in between a lot of dissertation juries in my college today. I was moving in and out, but whatever I had seen in terms of, the open spaces, their identification of issues towards the end, they are all very worthwhile. In fact, my visit to CCA and my connection with, MSA is a very important connection, and we'll take it ahead. Following this, I am actually, 3 of my students from my previous years have actually continued into studying urban village in Noida. So, I mean, I would like to invite you all to the small presentation following this, and this would be the strength of academia. That's all that I would say. Thank you, Dr. Champa, and
Yeah, thank you.
all the students.
Just as
Congratulations.
a last note, I would
Yes,
like
ma'am.
to inform that almost about 50 students are sitting in our AV room and watching these presentations.
Ma'am, I have shared that photograph with everyone, saying that
Okay.
everybody was worried as to why students are not joining. I said from one camera we counted people, and there were over 27 in that photograph. And if there are 50 students, it's further congratulations, because we are doing this primarily for building a policy, and we are nobody to build a policy till the time we don't have local resource, local information, local colleges and students participating. Policies have been written, but they have failed. So policy can be in place where we have a local interface, and that is very important. And that is what me and Dr. Bagga were also talking when we were in Chandigarh, that this kind of a network is what is required. So thank you all so much. There's a small presentation which is to follow from some researchers who have continued their academic project into their individual researches. So it is that small project that's going to follow now. Thank you.
Yes, I'll present my screen.
Yes.
Yes, Himanshi.